on your videos so we can start the meeting.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you so much. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Max Disposti, pronounced him. I'm the board president, and I would like to welcome you to the Board of Behavioral Sciences board meeting. Today is May 6, 2021, and the time is 9:02 a.m. This meeting is occurring at various locations pursuant to Executive Order N-25-20 dated March 12, 2020. This public meeting will be held via WebEx platform that you can all see. And good morning, moderator. Thank you for your help already. Could you please explain how we will conduct in the comments portions of this meeting? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. When the board calls for public comment, I will be utilizing the question and answer feature. Each time we go for public comment, I will be displaying instructions on the screen, but you will be clicking on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and typing, "I would like to comment." All comments will be addressed in the order they are received. All commenters will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. Once your time has been reached, I will be muting your microphone and we will be moving on to the next public comment. With that, thank you.
Thank you so much, moderator. And now I believe our legal counsel, Sabina, will take the quorum of our board members. Board member, as you state your presence, please also share if you're a public member or the licensee that you hold. Thank you so much. Sabina?
Max, I think I will be taking the, establish the forum for you.
I appreciate that, Vice President Wong. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Deborah Brown.
Deborah Brown, public member.
We're establishing our quorum and introduction both, right, Max?
Yes, we do. So that it's much easier than we have to go back to it. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Max.
Public member, board chair.
Susan Friedman.
Here, public member.
Dinah Herwick.
I'm here, LPC member.
Chris Jones.
I'm here, the LEP member.
Jonathan Maddox.
Here, LMFT member.
Kelly Renasinghe.
I'm here, public member.
John Slovak.
Here, LMFT member. My pronouns are he, him.
Wendy Strack.
I'm here, public member.
Yvette Willis.
I'm here, public member.
And last, Christina Wong. I'm here also, LCSW member. And for the record, Crystal Anthony and Ross Ehrlich are absent. So back to you, Max.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for taking up the role at the last minute. We really, really appreciate it. I know there were some connections issues with our staff. That's why it was a last minute change. Okay, we will now move to the I will now open for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. And as a reminder, the board might not discuss or take action on any matter that is raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda in a future meeting. Please I would like actually to move to the moderator so they could actually facilitate the comments portion of this agenda. Moderator?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request public comment, please click on the question mark within the square located in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and type, "I would like to make a comment." Again, all comments will be addressed in the order they are received. You will be provided 2 minutes and given a 15-second warning. With that, I will now pause momentarily to allow individuals time to access this feature. At this time, it does appear we have an individual identified as Latanya Seawood. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Thank you, moderator.
Latanya, you
Hello,
are unmuted.
can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to come before the board today for a request for consideration or a waiver for this 6-year rule due to circumstances around COVID-19 and the state shutdown. In my personal case, due to all the things going on, I was out short 145 hours. I was due to be done with my licensure May 29, 2020, and then I ended up losing 645 hours of direct service. And best efforts possible with all the things that are in place, I am still over 400 hours away because of the loss, and I would have to meet with 32 students a day for our 4 days that we're open in school and 8 hours a day virtually, back to back from now and through the summer to meet that goal, and it's just unrealistic with all the things that are in place due to COVID-19. So I'm just asking for an extension due to COVID-19 and the state shutdown and all the restrictions that are in place. I know that there's waivers and exceptions that have made for other areas, so I'm just asking for consideration for the 6-year rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Moderator, do we have any other requests?
No, at this time, we have no additional requests. Would you like me to close this feature?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Feature has been closed.
Okay, now for our next item agenda, we are going to open for suggestion for future agenda items. Again, please remember to use your raise hands function if you would like to make a comment, and this is for my board member, and each one will have 3 minutes to speak if there are any suggestions for new agenda items. Looks like we're good to go. Okay.
This is the moderator. It appeared that John Sobek actually had his hand raised.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, John. Go ahead.
Thanks, Max. I want us to consider bringing onto a future agenda item really intensive training within the BBS as an entire entity on gender identity issues. It's come to my attention recently that multiple people of the trans community have been continuously misgendered in their experiences with the board. And this has been something we've been talking about for over a year, and I think we really need to get serious about our action on it. This isn't just something that's a casual thing. This is these people's real and actual identities, and for their experiences with the board, which represents them, to have these very traumatizing experiences, I think we need to get really aggressive in addressing this issue and find a way to mediate some solutions.
Thank you, John. I know the staff is making note. Just for the record, we had a presentation, a very extensive presentation about 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, so don't quote me. I think it will be absolutely beneficial, I agree with you, to have experts coming again and doing the presentation for the board. Is obviously available to the public and to our licensee as well. So thank you for this agenda.
This needs to be specifically addressed with staff who are having direct interaction with our licensees and registrants.
Oh, okay. Then yes, absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments for future items in the agenda from our board members or proposals? Okay. I think I can see you all at this point. I figured that out. And we can move now to our next agenda items that will introduce our petitioners. I think at this point, actually, I will turn the meeting to our administrative law judge. I don't know if they're already in the room. I wasn't communicated the name, so please introduce yourself if that's the case, and I can move the floor to you so that you're in charge of this second part of the meeting.
Good morning. This is Judge Wong. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
Madam Moderator, I understand our court reporter has not been promoted yet. It is Sherry Davis.
This is the moderator. I appreciate that. I was waiting for identification of who that was. They have been promoted.
Great. Ms. Davis, can you hear us okay? Ms. Davis, you're currently muted.
Yes, there we go.
Okay,
Okay,
you could hear us okay?
yes, I'm here now. Thank you. I was not able to unmute myself, but I got it now. Thank you.
Okay, if I could real quick get your CSR number, please.
13910.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before we go on the record, I will just kind of give some general background. First, it's my understanding none of the petitioners are represented by counsel. So what I would do is I would call them in order listed on the agenda. Second, it's my understanding that Brianna Charles Evenrudd has withdrawn her petition, so that matter will not be heard. So for the 4 petitioners that are on the line whose matters will be heard, just procedurally, what will happen is when I call your case, the Deputy Attorney General will give kind of a summary overview of your prior discipline, introduce the petition packet, and then the floor will be turned over to you to give your presentation under oath. And you can also, I'll ask you if you have any additional documents or any witnesses that you're calling other than yourself. One thing I want to remind you that on these petitions hearings, what the board is most focused on is any rehabilitation you've undergone since your license was disciplined. So you'll hear the Deputy Attorney General talk about the underlying discipline, which is important so we can know how to measure your rehabilitation. But it's important to understand that we're not here to relitigate the prior discipline. So you want to focus on the events subsequent to the discipline. All right, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have if I can. All right, so first we have...
Your Honor?
Yes.
I apologize. This is our board chair. There's been a change in the sequence of the petitioners. Would you mind to, maybe I can share with you because we had different requests. The first one is that petitioner Brianna Charles Evenrudd will not be here today. She withdrawn the petition and her request, so it's not longer in our agenda. And we have a request to have, we will have Davidson coming first, and then Neft, and then everything else it was expected to be in our agenda items, Edwards, and so forth.
Very good. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much.
That is the order I will call them in. So the first one will be Deborah Gail Davidson.
This is the moderator. If I may interject just momentarily, a reminder to the panel, if you're not speaking, to please mute yourself. And Deborah Davidson, if we could please get you to turn on your camera at this time. You can find that at the bottom of your screen where it says Start Video. If you click on that, you will be able to have your video in place. Thank you.
All right, so Madam Court Reporter, if we could go ahead and go on the record. So we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Deborah, that's D-E-B-O-R-A-H, Gail, G-A-I-L, Davidson, D-A-V-I-D-S-O-N, It's OAH number 2021040526. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I have been assigned to preside over this matter. To establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Mr. Disposti?
Board member present. Board chair.
Ms. Wong?
Christina Wong, LCSW member. I'm here.
And Ms. Brown?
Deborah Brown here, public member.
Ms. Friedman?
Susan Friedman, public member. I'm here.
Dr. Herwick?
Diana Herwick, LPC member. I'm here.
Mr. Jones?
Chris Jones, LEP member. I'm here.
Mr. Maddox?
Jonathan Maddox, LMFT member here.
Mr. Ranasinghe?
Ellie Renisinger, public member. I'm here.
Mr. Sovic?
John Sovak, LMFT member, present.
Ms. Strack?
Wendy Strack, public member, present.
And Ms. Willis?
Yvette Willis, public member, and I'm present.
All right, thank you. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present. And may I next take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General.
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis. I am appearing on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California, pursuant to Government Code Section 11522. My role here is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. Thank you.
Good morning. And Ms. Davidson, if I could just have you state your name for the record.
This is the moderator. It does appear you are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Deborah Gale Davidson.
Great, thank you. All right. So Ms. Davidson, just before we went over the record, went on the record, I discussed the procedural aspect of this matter. Did you have any questions?
I don't think so. It was difficult to hear, so I didn't get everything that you said, but yeah, I'm good.
Okay, well, I could go over it again. And basically, shortly, Ms. Jarvis will present the petition packet and then give a summary overview of this matter and the prior discipline of your license. And then after she provides her summary, you'll have an opportunity to present your case. And so you can testify. If you have any witnesses that you wanted to testify on your behalf, you could do that. Also, if you had additional documents you wanted to introduce, you would have an opportunity to do that. But the main thing I wanted to remind you of is that on the petition hearings, what the board is most focused on and most interested in is hearing about any rehabilitation you have undergone since your license was originally disciplined. So you'll hear Ms. Jarvis talk about the prior discipline, and that's just to give the board a background of what happened. But we're not here to relitigate the discipline. So your focus should be on rehabilitation you have undergone since that discipline, okay?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Ms. Jarvis, do you wish to present your documents and your summary at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, if you don't mind, I will present the summary wherein I will describe the documents, and then I'll move to have them admitted at the conclusion of the summary.
Okay, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I didn't receive any evidence in advance of the hearing. So what documents were you intending to introduce?
The petition packet itself. Did you not receive those packets?
Okay, I did receive that, but I just wanted to make sure it did not include the underlying discipline.
It should have. The packet that I received that was the same as was uploaded to you had the underlying discipline at page 15 for this case.
Okay, mine doesn't.
Okay.
So we'll just, what we could do is I could keep the record open to have that submitted.
Well, and maybe, okay, yeah, I can, because I can upload those to OEH's system on any break. It'll only take me a moment. But then I'm concerned about the other 3 petition hearings that we have today as well. Did you get any of the underlying decisions?
I did not get any of the underlying decisions.
Okay, so what I'll do when we take our first break this morning, I will go ahead and just re-upload everything that I will be talking about today for all 4 cases.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. On March 9th of 2009, the petitioner was issued an LCSW license. On or about February 26th, 2016, petitioner was convicted after her plea of no contest to driving while under the influence of alcohol. As an enhancement, petitioner admitted that her blood alcohol content exceeded 0.2%. In fact, at the time of her arrest, petitioner's blood alcohol level was nearly 0.23%, nearly 3 times the legal limit of 0.08. Petitioner was sentenced in the criminal court to 3 years probation, was ordered to serve 4 days in jail or do 4 days of work release, 8 hours of volunteer work, the 9-month first offender DUI program, and pay court fines. Via stipulated settlement, effective August 2nd, 2018, petitioner's license was revoked, with the revocation stayed for a 5-year probation term and to complete specified conditions of probation. One of those conditions of probation was to attend regular psychotherapy. But on or about November 2nd, 2020, petitioner requested to reduce the frequency of her therapy appointments, and that request was approved by board staff. So petitioner's therapy was thereby reduced to only twice per month. At this time, petitioner is fully compliant with probation, including completing 2 units of continuing education in substance use and abuse. Petitioner is also up to date with her cost recovery payments. So her cost recovery is not paid off, but she is up to date with her payment plan. Now, in support of this petition, petitioner provided the following information. Several letters. So a letter from petitioner's direct supervisor supporting petitioner and stating that her annual reviews indicate that she meets and exceeds expectations while working with some of the most difficult patients in the state of California. A letter from a clinical psychologist who has known petitioner for 12 years, stating that petitioner is diligent and responsible. A letter from the program director where petitioner works, stating that petitioner has his full confidence. And a letter from an LMFT stating that she has known respondent for over 40 years and professionally for over 20 years and fully supports this petition. So this, based on our conversation earlier, previously, the entire petition packet was submitted as one PDF document. When I upload it, I will submit it all as one. So the petition itself will start on page 4. The underlying decision and order will start on page 15. And there will be a license history certification on page 36. The notice of hearing is just before that, starting at page 34. That notification of hearing was also uploaded separately from the original petition packet yesterday at approximately 3:50 p.m. So, Your Honor, would you like me to move that in now, knowing that you don't have a copy, or do you want to wait?
I don't have a problem with you moving it in at this time.
Okay, so it will be a 38-page PDF when I upload it, and I would like to move the entire petition packet as previously described as Exhibit 1.
All right, so those documents will be marked collectively as Exhibit 1. Ms. Davidson, do you have any objection to Exhibit 1 being admitted for all purposes?
No.
Okay, Exhibit 1 is so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at this time, it is petitioner's opportunity to address the board.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Davidson, do you have any additional documents that you wanted to have admitted?
I've submitted everything I have to the board, and I'm assuming that all the board members have all the documents that are needed.
Okay. Did you have any witnesses you wanted to testify on your behalf other than yourself?
No, not today, no.
Okay, and
Thank
so
you,
do you wish to testify at this time?
yes,
Okay, if I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may put your hand down. And I'm sorry, before you begin, one thing I forgot to mention to you procedurally is after you provide your testimony, Ms. Jarvis will have an opportunity to ask you questions. And then after she's done asking questions, you'll have the opportunity to provide any additional testimony if you have any. And it's that back and forth format until both you and Ms. Jarvis have asked all your questions, and then the board will have opportunity to ask any questions. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so with that, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the board for providing me with the opportunity to request early termination of my probation. My hope is that after reading the documents in my file, including the regular reports from my therapist, you will feel confident that I am safe to practice and in no way pose a threat with regards to disrespecting my license in the future. Although the circumstances of my life at the time of the DUI were exceptionally difficult, I would like the board to be aware that at no time before or since that period have I had a pattern of substance abuse. My history as a therapist social worker has always garnered excellent reviews, and I have never been the subject of an inquiry or disciplinary action. I am an LCSW who has been working at Napa State Hospital for approximately 14 years after moving from Florida in 2007. I have been licensed in Florida since 1993 and obtained a license in California in 2009. At the time of the DUI, I was really in a dark place. My mother, who was ill, had been hospitalized and her prognosis was poor. My ex-husband, with whom I was still extremely close to, was dying of cancer. Also, my partner and I had just broken up and he had moved back to the East Coast. I had in recent months begun to drink more wine, usually at home and mostly alone. I would drink alcohol in social situations as well. The night of the DUI, I had met a friend who is also a therapist, and I had unburdened myself on her while continuing to drink far more wine than I was used to. When I left the restaurant and music venue, I was disoriented and severely impaired. My judgment at that point was extremely poor, and I got behind the wheel of my car and drove. Luckily, the police stopped and arrested me. The lucky part of this was that no one had been injured or killed. The other reason I am grateful is that this was a wake-up call for me. It was evident and glaring that I was heading down a very slippery slope that could have resulted in me losing everything in my life that I had worked so hard for, including my dignity. The positive part of all this is that it placed me back on the healthy track of life. The program I was assigned to by the board has obliged me to get the help I so desperately needed. Taking part in the 12-step program of AA allowed me to process the guilt and shame I was feeling. Through sharing my own pain and listening to the pain and struggle of others, I was able to feel compassion both for them and myself and understand the role of alcohol in my life. I was able to restore some sense of faith to a God I had completely lost to this point. The individual therapy I have engaged in has given me a deeper perspective on how I reached the dead end that I did. I have explored family of origin issues, relationship issues, processing grief and loss, the reliance on using healthier coping skills, and returning a sense of myself that I had lost. In summary, I wish to say I'm happy and future-oriented. I have accumulated non-drinking friends and engage in activities that are healthy. I enjoy the outdoors, including hiking, cycling, camping, and exploring new places. I like not drinking because my mind is clear and my judgment is good and unclouded. I feel better and have no desire to drink alcohol. I really don't see the point. I really enjoy my abstinent lifestyle and feel like a better person because of it. Thank you for giving me the time to present my case to you today.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davidson. Ms. Jarvis, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Davidson, do you continue to attend AA?
Yes, I do.
And I believe you stated that you've worked all of the 12 steps. Is that correct?
I have attended AA twice a week now for almost 3 years, and I work the program. The main component of AA is a desire to stop drinking, which I have done. And so I practice the 12 steps as much as possible, and I just try and use them daily in my life.
Was there any one of the 12 steps that was the most meaningful step for you in your recovery?
Yeah, I think the hardest one was step 3, which was well, turning my life over to a higher power, and because at that time I was really struggling in my belief system regarding God and the existence of God, and yeah, the suffering people go through, and that was a very hard step for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you currently have a sponsor?
No, I use my therapist.
And have you ever stepped up in AA to sponsor others?
No, I have not done that. I've done that with some friends of mine who were drinking and who were struggling and still are, and so they've been more or less the people I've sponsored.
In your petition packet, you had an attachment for question 11. Do you recall writing that?
I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
It was the description of the arrest, and you stated that on August 23rd, 2015, you were arrested in Santa Rosa, California for a DUI with a blood alcohol level of 0.023. Now that's not correct. Correct? Is that right?
It happened October 23rd of 2015, and I did have a very high blood alcohol level.
Right. So in your petition packet, you wrote that your alcohol level was 0.023, but in fact it was 0.23.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that just an error?
That's an error. I'm sorry. Yes.
I have no other questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson, is there anything else you wanted to say on your behalf?
It's just that I have I've really worked hard on my recovery. I've been sober now for almost 3 years. I'm a person in recovery who is very responsible and who is taking her recovery very seriously. I've used my therapy on a weekly basis to address some of the issues that tied in with my drinking at the time, and most notably, grief and loss issues. So I've had negative urine drug screens. I completed my requirement for the course within the first 3 months of my probation. I've done nothing but comply fully with the requirements, and it was very hard work, and I really struggled with that. But I'm very proud that that I have a sober lifestyle right now, and I've worked very hard for it, and I don't plan or anticipate drinking again. I'm very happy with the way I am, and my non-drinking friends that I've made, and yeah, I'm not sure what else I can say, but yeah, I'm just tongue-tied right now. I'm sorry.
No problem. You're doing fine. Ms. Jarvis, anything further on cross?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. So I will next turn it to the board to see if there are any questions. Mr. Chairman, do you have any questions?
Yes, just briefly, Your Honor. Thank you so much. Ms. Davison, thank you so much for being here, and so good to see you.
Thank you.
Really good to see you. I hope this year has been kind to you as much as we can figure that out, right? It's been definitely a challenged one, and
It's been challenging,
to say the least. No, thank you. Thank you for really showing and making yourself vulnerable. It was very good to see what, since last time we spoke as well. And so I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. As you know, we're not here to go back in the past. We're just trying to figure out
right?
the things have changed for you. So if you can speak a little bit more about, because you're doing, your career is impressive. You've been helping a lot of people, and yet life kicks in for all of us, right? Throws us challenges and the losses of the loved ones and all other things.
Exactly.
So what do you think has changed after the DUI in regards to what are your coping mechanisms? What do you do when things get hard, and how you address that? So what is there today that wasn't there before, that didn't put you in that situations of self-control, for instance, right? And so if you can elaborate a little bit more with that, that will help us, not just the board, but even all of us, to understand a little bit also this healing process and so forth.
Okay.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my one of the coping mechanisms I was relying on at the time that all these situations were happening was I was coming home from work, and I would go to the gym. So it seems like I had a normal life, and I would come home, and then I would just start drinking. And and my drinking increased, and I was becoming, I think, even though I was still socializing, I was still cycling. That's one of my big coping skills, as well as including friends and talking with them. I was starting to drink more, and it was becoming to the point where I would come home and then I would drink by myself. So that was becoming a way for me to numb everything that was going on at the time, and I was really numbing my feelings, and I knew that, but at the time I couldn't stop. I tried to cut down. I tried to go without drinking, and I found that I was building a tolerance. And I know that's, that's one of the descriptions for a alcohol use disorder. Yeah, so, given that fact that was becoming a primary coping skill, what the therapy and what the AA program has taught me, and really kind of realigned me with the person I feel like I used to be, that was pretty healthy. One, I think the stigma and the shame that was attached to my drinking, and I knew it was a problem, I was able to talk about in AA. And, it was really kind of a correcting experience for me, because there are other people who I could identify with that were undergoing similar or worse situations. And some of them had lost everything. And so in one sense, I was looking at my future, seeing some of those people. So AA was, the whole incident was a wake-up call for me. Part of AA also helped restore my faith, because at the time of the DUI, I was very bitter and I was very angry. I'd grown up in a religious home, and that was very unusual for me, to dismiss God and religious upbringing I had. So that was not like me, but regardless, what AA helped me do is realign myself with the God, not necessarily the God I grew up with, but with a connection, I guess, with the universe, with other people, with the world, that, my drinking had really alienated me from. So, so that gave me a foundation, and it gave me some stability in my life again. And it restored compassion for myself. And I always had compassion for other people. But it really allowed me to kind of relieve myself of the burden of shame that I was undergoing. It allowed me to reach out to other people, for other people to welcome me. It gave me a foundation with the 12 steps to practice those in my daily life. I was able to basically to make amends with people I had offended in my history, including some of my family members. They were very supportive of me not drinking. And so I had a lot of support through my family and through my supervisor at work, who has been a godsend. She's been incredibly understanding. Therapy really helped me dig into some of the relevant issues that were affecting my drinking. And without going into great detail, some of those were issues around loss and grief and abandonment. And, that's one of the things that the alcohol served to do, was to really help me cope in a very unhealthy way by blotting out some of the feelings I was having with that. But my therapy helped me move forward. It gave me a support to try out a sober lifestyle. So I was able to test certain things in the community, in my personal life, and come back and process that with my therapist. The other thing that really helped me in therapy is not being judged, being supported, digging up things that I didn't want to look at, looking at my relationships, the use of alcohol as far as my history went. And so it's really, I think both AA and both my therapy has really given me a strong foundation at this point in my life to resume living fully and living without alcohol. I have very healthy coping skills. You know, I love the outdoors. I live in a place that's surrounded by parks. I hike all the time. I cycle. I go camping. You know, I socialize with my friends. I have a very open communication with people. And I feel like I don't have to hide any drinking habits. So it helps me feel like, you know, it keeps me on some of the 12 steps of honesty and disclosure to other people. And that's really who I am. I'm not, you know, I'm not the deceiving, despairing person I think that alcohol helped me become. So I love to read. I, you know, love movies. You know, I volunteer here. I live in an older community, so I lead bike rides for the older community here, usually once a week. And you know, they're great role models. I hope to aspire to, when I get to their age, that I'm as healthy as they are. And you know, I just appreciate life right now. And AA has also taught me to be very grateful for what I have. And I am incredibly grateful for the things I have in my life right now. So I'm not sure if I hope I addressed some of the questions you asked. You know I probably rambled. So I hope that.
You did. Thank you. Thank you for elaborating so that it's really helpful for us. So I really appreciate, again, Your Honor, I don't have any further questions, so I'll leave it to my fellow board members. Thank you again, Ms. Davison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chairwoman, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Good morning, Ms. Davison. And thank you so much for your very candid explanation about, you know, your, you know, how the rehabilitation methods has been helping you. I have I have three questions. For one is, first one is, when is your sobriety date?
My sobriety date is actually the date my stipulation started. So as you can see, I was still drinking up until those stipulations were in place. So it would be August 2nd, or actually the day before. So August 1st of 2018, yeah.
Very nice, thank you. So, and I can just really, you know, feel that, you know, you're very compassionate, very, you know, you have a lot of emotions in you. And obviously, you know, you do make that connection, knowing that, you know, drinking has been serving the purpose of numbing your feelings, right?
Exactly,
now,
exactly.
Right. So the good thing is, like, now you're clean and sober.
I know, and I think so clearly now.
Yes, which is a wonderful thing. And yet the bad thing is, like, you know, you feel your emotions even more. So, you know, so I know, right. Now, so I know you talked about using your therapist, you know, and your AA, you know, support group, you know, to really help you stay grounded, and also to, you know, to guide you. So I'm actually really wondering that also, when the time they're not available, how are you
Yes.
dealing with your emotions?
Well, I, I think what's changed is that, I've always been so independent and so self-sufficient. And it's, I think part of it, and here's part of AA too, is pride gets in the way. And so I never really reached out and asked for help very often. So I think, what the therapy and the AA has taught me is that, pride goeth before a fall. And obviously, I really fell on this one. So when, let's say AA and my therapy is no longer there, I mean, what I've really learned is to reach out and to really include people more in my personal life, in my deepest part of myself, and not hide it and not be afraid to share that, I am vulnerable. I'm not perfect. And neither is anyone else. And I think just probably connecting with someone on a human level, it's like, I think part of me just had to be perfect, and God, does that get in the way? So
Absolutely.
a lot of things.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. And I can see why the third step is so hard for you, because you have to give up your control.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
So thank you. I have another question, and I'm just very curious. And so at the day of your incident, obviously, you were, I think you mentioned that, you were drinking with a therapist also. So I am very curious because you are the one who got disciplined. And obviously, I have no idea who this person is, but I'm sure, your friendship with her, is part of, that you have to make amends or whatnot. So I'm just curious that how do you manage that part of your your feeling, towards her, because you got disciplined and possibly she doesn't.
You know what? That is something that when this incident happened, not to relive everything, but that night, that friend had to go home. So it's, and I was out. It's like I wanted to go listen to some music, something I generally don't do. And instead of like, usually this friend and I would go out and we'd walk for 30 minutes to an hour after we ate and had, a couple of glasses of wine, and then drive home. So we gave ourselves time usually. This night, what happened, I was so despondent. I ended up drinking a lot more than I usually do. And when I went to see this music venue, this band, she had already pretty much, she had gone. She had to get home. And I ended up having more wine. And so, it was my responsibility at this point. If I had had an iPhone instead of a flip phone, I could have had Uber that I had downloaded on the iPhone, and I would have called them. But at the time, I had an old phone and you couldn't download anything like that. So here I was about 20 miles away from my home. And given my judgment, after I had continued to drink, and I got my car. The thing with my friend, again, I was very angry that she got home and I didn't make it. And we initially, she knew I was angry at her, and we've had several meetings around this issue. You know, our friendship almost ended, but we were able to talk and work through this. I was able to share my feelings with her about how angry I was. You know, that she left when I was, you know, I had more to drink than her, and she had left, and you know, we had several heartfelt talks, and even to this day, we're still talking about it. And the nice thing is, when we get together, neither one of us drink. I don't drink, and she doesn't drink in front of me. So, you know, it's also influenced her drinking behavior as well. So
That's wonderful.
it's very difficult.
Yes, yes. So thank you very much. And I'm glad that, you know, you guys make up and really continue to be the support for each other. And, you know, and she's able to set the boundary for you also and respect your recovery. I have no further question, Your Honor. Thank you so much, Ms. Davidson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, any questions?
None at this time.
All right, Ms. Friedman?
No, I have no questions, but thank you so much for being here and telling us your story.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Dr. Herwick?
No additional questions. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Maddox?
Good morning. Yes, I do have a couple questions. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, you mentioned that you're in your own reflection about yourself, you're aware of your tendency to be, as you described it, stubborn and prideful and to sort of err on the side of isolation. So I'm curious, in knowing that pattern about yourself, why have you not decided to have a sponsor who really, I think, is a very practical solution to that behavior pattern? And you've given a lot of wonderful answers. So, and you are very verbose, which I really appreciate. But I may just intervene some if it seems to go on. But I'm curious, why not a sponsor if you know that about yourself?
You know, initially I did ask for one, and you know, early on, probably within the first 2 months of AA, and I really didn't get a good response. And so I just be myself at that time and really not going through much change. I just left it. And I figured, you know, I have a therapist. I see my therapist weekly. I have friends in the field. I talk with them. And so really I justified it like that. And I also, you know, I also justified it. I think that AA, the only requirement is a wish to quit drinking. And I know I'm rationalizing as I say that, because there's so much more to AA, but, you know, and I recognize I'm rationalizing, but, you know, AA in its early stage was really, the 12 steps came much later, as sponsorship did as well. And the early stages of AA were strictly about meeting and, you know.
Is it okay if I slow you down because you actually answered my question? It sounds like now you're kind of, you know, kind of preaching. So you answered my question.
Sorry.
Is it okay?
I'm
If I slow
sorry.
you down? No, you answered it. Thank you. I appreciate it. So,
Okay.
So I'm curious, now that I've mentioned it again, and you're recognizing that one of the things you struggle with is needing to be in control and to dictate and sort of drive what's going on.
Yeah.
Are you interested in, would you reconsider having a sponsor? And the reason why I say that is therapists are helpful to the extent that we tell them what's going on. friends will sort of sometimes just say things, nice platitudes to us because they don't want to disrupt our friendships. Sponsors have been down the road you're on. They have the experience and they know how to challenge you in ways that people who haven't been on that road can.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you'd now be willing to reconsider having that kind of relationship, because it builds a level of accountability in your rehabilitation process that some of those other relationships can't.
Right, that makes sense. Yes. Yes, I would reconsider that. You know, here's another thing I think with AA. I've taken a lot of what their philosophy is and I've used it. But I think the other thing is you're an alcoholic first, and then it seems like you're a person second. And there's other recovery models. I think I appreciate AA, but I feel like I'm a person first and I'm in recovery. And I think that's kind of my dividing line with AA. You know, that would be like me telling my patients, you know, when you introduce yourself, say you're a schizophrenic, and then tell them about your personhood. And that's one issue I have with AA. So, and that is just my issue. You know, it works for a lot of people, and it's worked for me, but that's an issue I have. So that's probably part of the sponsorship question that you asked.
Well, that's a great answer. I appreciate that because you're not the only person who sees it that way. So thank you. I appreciate it. One final question. This is just about sort of you drilling down and being more specific about what skills you are currently using. The last year has been horrific, at least for me, in terms of the shelter in place and the lockdowns, which I completely understand as having been necessary. But I've struggled just personally. I have. And so my guess is most people have. And so I'm curious, what skills have you utilized during the past 18 months as evidence that you are mastering healthy ways to manage painful affect, isolation? What sorts of skills are you using? I'm very curious about that.
Well, again, you know, I am reaching out. I am reaching out to people as opposed to sitting at home and drinking alcohol at night. So I have a good support system. During the time of the pandemic, even though, you know, initially we were all socially isolated, it was keeping in touch by phone, eventually with mask. It was doing things with people that I enjoy, such as hiking. You know, I've reached out to my family. We've talked more about, you know, some of the, it's like my dysfunctional family. We tend not to talk about things. So I've really breached that golden rule. And, you know, part of making amends was opening up to my family and coming clean with them. And, you know, in turn, I think it's helped them open up to me as well. You know, still I go to AA. I read, you know, I read the AA material. I try and practice it. I use, you know, being grateful every morning. That's one of the first things I do is think about what I'm grateful for. You know, I don't know. I just have a good support system that I use now, and I'm very open. I ask people to tell me when they see me doing things that are offensive, and that includes work. If I seem to be like being in control, trying to control things, you know, I ask them to please tell me. So I'm very honest with people. And if I feel like I've offended someone, I try and talk to them immediately. So that's very different for me. So I think, it's been a coping skill that's helped me be vulnerable, that's helped me put pride in place and control in place. So it's put me more on the hot seat than other people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, thank you. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable with your family. And just so you know, we all have dysfunctional families. So, hey, we're all in that club. So
that's
thank
why
you.
we're in this field, right?
Yeah, I hate to admit it,
Thank you.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate your answers. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you're well and have a wonderful day. I have no more questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Ranasinghe, any questions?
Yes, I just have very few questions. Ms. Davidson, since 2015, other than minor traffic offenses, have you had any other law enforcement contacts?
No, I haven't. I've had, I've had a couple of traffic violations, unfortunately, but that has been it.
Okay. Okay, that's really all the questions I had. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Sovek, any questions?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I wanted to ask you one question about work and one question about sobriety. So I'll start with the sobriety question. Do you describe yourself as sober or newly sober, if you had to choose between those?
Well, I would say sober, and I think part of that is, if you look at the DSM, I hate to drag that in here, but a year being in remission, a fully sustained remission for over a year, I think designates that I'm more sober. I mean, it's been almost 3 years. So I feel like I'm not newly sober, but I'm newly sober in the sense that I can always learn something. There's always things to learn. There's always new things to practice. And, so in that sense, I guess I'm newly sober. But as far as being abstinent, I guess I'm just sober.
Okay, thank you. And the other questions I wanted to ask you about were about your work environment. Where do you currently work?
I work at Napa State Hospital. It's a state forensic mental health facility. It's got, I'm not sure how many patients, but over 1,000 patients.
And what is your regular client load, let's say per week?
Per week, I work on a unit. We actually work on the living space with the patients, and there's 40 patients on the unit. So I have an office on the unit within their living space. My particular caseload right now is 30, but when we have alternate work days. So when the other team isn't there, I basically care for all 40 patients.
What would you say your weekly hours are? Are you doing 32 hours a week, 40, 50? What would you say your normal week would be?
Well, I work basically 4 10-hour days, roughly, give or take. And I don't know if you want to hear my job responsibilities or.
No, I'm okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of, and the reason these questions are being asked about your work environment is you are working in a very high stress environment. And
Yes.
I just want to know, you've had one of those 10-hour days, you've had your very high need clients asking for a lot from you from those days.
Right.
What do you do at the end of that day? Where you say alcohol used to be the thing you would do, what happens at the end of that 10-hour day with it turned into an 11-hour day and you had really high need clients? How do you self-care in that particular moment?
Well, that's a good question. I have to say, Napa State Hospital is really good about trying to care for their employees. And, you know, part of it, they have a wellness committee. One of the things that I do, I don't get to it every week, but they offer yoga classes on lunch breaks. We are in a beautiful setting with a park in back of us. So sometimes on my lunch break, I and some other people will just take walks in that park. You know, or I'll walk by myself on my lunch break. Sometimes go out to lunch with coworkers and just get off the unit, clear our mind. You know, and then the other thing we do is we process a lot of what goes on during the day with each other informally. When I come home, I have about an hour drive to get home, so it helps me decompress. And you know, one of the things I do is listen to books on tape as I'm driving. So that kind of helps me get away from the mindset of work and puts me in a different mood. When I get home, now that it's daylight savings time, I usually work in my garden or I'll go for a bike ride. I'll fix like a really good dinner. Sometimes I'll have someone over for dinner who's been vaccinated. So you know, I feel like I really take good care of myself now. So I'm not coming home and, you know, the bottle's my friend. Yeah, I do really healthy things for myself at this point.
Thank you so much. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Struck, any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Willis, any questions?
No questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Right, I think I've gone through all the board members, so just circling back in case any other members have thought of subsequent questions. Any questions from the board? All right, hearing none. Ms. Davidson, you're the petitioner, so I'll give you the last word. Is there anything else you wanted to add on your behalf?
Your Honor, may I ask a follow-up question before that?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Davidson, you said that your sobriety date is August 1st of 2018, but your conviction date was February of 2016. So you continued to drink for 2 years after being convicted?
Yes, I did. I did.
Did the criminal court order not prohibit you from consuming alcohol?
When I got off the, what was it? I think it was, you know what? To tell the truth, I don't remember. I know I complied basically with the requirements at that time in 2015, which is when the incident occurred. And, you know, after I got the notice about the stipulations that the board was going to place on me, which was about 1.5 years from the time I got the initial notice to when the stipulations started taking place. Yeah, I did drink.
And so we don't have your criminal court records in front of us today, but you were ordered to attend the 9-month first offender DUI program. Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. And generally that program does require you to abstain from alcohol for those 9 months. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you abstain during the 9 months the criminal court ordered that?
No, I did not fully sustain from drinking during that time. No.
Okay. So it wasn't until you found out that your license was going to be disciplined that you had the motivation, I guess, to stop drinking.
Well, you're right. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Thank you. I have nothing.
Yeah, I did not break
That's
that
okay.
cycle. Yeah.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Davidson, anything else you'd like to say on your behalf?
Gosh, Yeah, probably after I hang up, I will think of all sorts of things, but right now, I cannot think of anything.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you. So you're excused as a witness. And just to confirm, you do not have any witnesses you wish to call on your behalf, correct?
No, I was gonna have my therapist here today, but I just, yeah, we just decided I would just go ahead and do this by myself, so.
All righty. Thank you. Do you rest your case, Ms. Davidson?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Jarvis, do you wish to give a closing?
No, thank you, Your Honor. I have no recommendation for the board at this time.
All right, Ms. Davidson, your closing argument?
Well, I didn't know I was going to give a closing argument, so let me just, I'll try and do this briefly. Yes, I just want the board to know that I am in remission, I am sober, I'm safe to practice. I have no desire to drink. I've broken that cycle, which was quite difficult to do. And I think, I think part of that I was under the microscope. And I really think that being under the microscope forced me to basically have to change, have to take a look at myself and have to make a pretty big lifestyle adjustment. And I've done that and I'm very proud of it. And I've worked very hard for it. And I don't see me returning to the lifestyle I had. I don't really see the point. I don't see the purpose of it. I think it's a slippery slope, and I don't want to lose everything I've worked for, and I've come very close to that. And this really was a wake-up call. So, yeah, so thank you. Thank you for letting me appear before you today and presenting my case.
All right, thank you very much. So that concludes the hearing in this matter. Ms. Jarvis, I did want to let you know I did receive the packets in the meantime. In case you didn't know that, you don't need to submit them again. I do have them. So the record's closed, and we are off the record. Ms. Davidson, so after the board hears the remaining matters, the board will adjourn to closed session and then discuss your matter. And so you won't receive a decision today, but you'll receive one later in the mail.
Okay.
What you will receive shortly from my office is a copy of the court reporter billing form. And that's just in case you want to order a copy of today's transcript that will have the information you need to go about doing that. And so that's just the form for your record, just in case you want it. If we were in person, we would hand it to you, but since we're not, we'll send it to you. Okay.
I'm going to be leaving after this, and I'll be out of state for at least 2 weeks. So if that comes to my personal address, is there a time limit on being able to request that information that you're talking about?
No, I think transcripts are kept for quite some time.
Okay, okay, great.
That won't be a problem. Okay?
Okay, great.
All right,
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Thank you to members of the board, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the time.
All right, take care. And Madam Court Reporter, when you have a moment, if I could get a page estimate.
Should I sign off now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Your Honor, in the meantime, I will suggest a break until the next petitioner if we can resume with Petitioner Stu Neft at 10:30 this morning.
At 10:30, very good. And Madam
Thank
Court Reporter, I could just get the page estimate after the break. All right, thank you, everyone.
And we're resuming the petition. There is a feedback. Is that mine? Can you all hear? Okay, where is the public portion, petition portion of the BBS? Today, it's right now 10:30, May 6th, 2021. Your Honor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ms. Davis, if I could get the page estimate from the last matter.
Yes, Your Honor, I have 35 pages.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Mr. Neft, I see that you have been promoted to a panelist.
Should I turn my video on?
If you would, please.
Can you see me? Can you see me? Hello?
Oh, yep, I can.
Oh, okay.
Great, thank you. All right, Madam Court Reporter, if we could go ahead and go on the record.
Yes.
Thank you. So we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Stewart. Oops, excuse me, hang on 1 second.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. It's quite garbled.
Okay, let's see.
I'm showing two people popping up talking at the same time, which is Judge Wong and then Sheree Davis.
Oh, okay, Ms. Davis, if I could have you, well, actually, I think she just, okay, let's try this some more. It sounds like the feedback may have resolved. Second. All right, so let me start back over. We are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, in the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Stewart Neft. It's OAH number 2021040522. My name's Corin Wong. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I have been assigned to hear this matter. In order to establish a quorum of the board for the record, I request that each member respond audibly after his or her name is called. Ms. Willis?
I'm present, Your Honor.
Ms. Strack?
Sorry, I'm here. Thank you.
Mr. Sovic?
Present.
Mr. Ranasinger?
Present.
Mr. Maddox?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Hurwitz?
Present.
Ms. Friedman?
Did you say Friedman?
Yes.
Yes, here. Sorry.
No problem. Ms. Brown?
Here, and I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I could adjust my microphone a little bit. Madam Vice Chairwoman?
Here?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm here.
All right, thank you. Let the record reflect that a quorum of the board is present. And Ms. Jarvis, if I could take your appearance for the record.
Yes, good morning. I am Deputy Attorney General Christina Jarvis, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General for the people of the state of California, pursuant to Government Code Section 11522. My role is not adversarial, but it is intended to protect the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neft, if I could just have you state your appearance for the record.
Stu Neft.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. Neff, did you hear at the beginning of the proceedings when I talked about the procedural aspect of these hearings?
Yes, and I was here for the entirety of the previous petitioner.
Okay, do you have any questions about the process?
No, I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any witnesses that you wanted to call on your behalf?
No.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just the witness testimony from the letters of recommendation.
Okay. And other than the petition packet, did you have any documents you wanted to offer?
Yeah, I do have proof that I'm with AmeriCorps, and that is not something I've submitted yet. And I only just realized I'd forgotten to submit that information to you guys.
Okay, so is it a letter that you wanted to submit?
Yeah, it's a document from them just verifying that I'm part of their 2-year program.
Okay. We could have you submit that, keep the record open if there's no objection by Ms. Jarvis.
No objection.
Okay, so at the end of the hearing, we could talk about the process and the timelines for you to submit that.
Okay, thank you.
If I forget, just remind me, but I do have a note here that you'll be submitting that. Okay. Very good. Ms. Jarvis, do you wish to give your summary and then present the petition packet?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, one moment, please. Okay, if I could ask Ms. Jarvis to please make it a little bit slower for me, it'll make it much easier. Thank you.
No problem. After his applications for both AMFT and APCC licensure were initially denied, petitioner appealed the denial and proceeded to an administrative hearing. That hearing was held in Oakland on April 26, 2018. Effective September 19, 2018, the board adopted the proposed decision and disciplinary order, granting both registrations, immediately revoking them, staying the revocation, and then placing petitioner on probation for 5 years with specified conditions of probation. Petitioner's probation has since been told twice, and his current expected completion date of probation is February 5th, 2024. The circumstances of petitioner's applications being denied was that petitioner was convicted of property theft of an elder by a caretaker. Petitioner considered this man his grandfather due to the man's long-term domestic partnership with petitioner's grandmother, and I will refer to him as the grandfather. At the time the theft was discovered, petitioner's grandfather was 92 years old and had been diagnosed with dementia. He died less than a year later. According to the Sheriff's Department, petitioner stole at least $98,000 over 3 years through cash withdrawals, through petitioner writing checks to himself or on his own behalf from his grandfather's account, and petitioner making electronic payments from his grandfather's account to his own benefit. There were other questionable purchases as listed by the Sheriff's Department that were not included in the $98,000 estimation. Petitioner did pay the court-ordered restitution of $40,000 after his conviction. At this time, petitioner is 100% in compliance with the board's probation program. Now, in support of his petition, petitioner provided the following information. A letter from the Director of Clinical Training at the Behavioral Mental Health Program at Bay Area Community Resources, who states he has supervised petitioner and fully supports his petition for early termination. A letter from petitioner's therapist, who enthusiastically recommends petitioner's probation be terminated. A letter from a woman who states she has known petitioner his entire life, is aware of all of the circumstances surrounding the conviction, and still enthusiastically conveys her support of the petitioner. A letter from an individual who worked until a recent retirement at Mills College, who met petitioner when petitioner was enrolled there some 16 years ago. He and petitioner still keep in touch, and this individual recommends petitioner highly. And then a letter from a fellow AMFT who met petitioner while they were both attending school for their licensure and highly recommends petitioner. Petitioner also submitted continuing education certificates totaling 41 hours of continuing education or workshops from January of 2019 through March of 2021. And then petitioner also submitted his last year approximately of quarterly reports from April of 2020 through April of 2021. The petition packet includes all of those documents just described, plus the underlying decision, the notice of hearing, and a license certification. And as we discussed in the previous matter, all of those documents were submitted as one packet earlier today. The petition starts on page 4. Actually, I think some of my page numbers are a little bit off, so let me check real quick. Yes, one moment. So the petition starts on page 4. The underlying decision and order now will start on page 50. The notice of hearing for today starts on page 77. And then the registration history certification is at page 80. And at this time, I would like to move all of those documents described as Exhibit 1.
Those documents will be marked collectively as Exhibit 1. Mr. Neft, any objection to Exhibit 1 being admitted for all purposes?
No objection.
All right, that Exhibit 1's admitted for all purposes. Anything further, Ms. Jarvis?
No, thank you, Your Honor. It is now petitioner's opportunity to address the board.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Neft, as I mentioned at the beginning of these matters, the board's most focused, the board is most interested in hearing about any rehabilitation you have undergone since your license was placed on probation. So I just wanted to have you focus your attention on that. And let me swear you in. If I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you will provide in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, you may put your hand down. And I forgot to spell your name for the court reporter when I was calling the case, so if I could have you start by doing that, please.
Spelling my name?
Yes, please.
S-T-U-A-R-T. Last name is N-E, F as in football, T as in Tom.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
I just wanted to quickly clarify Miss Jarvis when she said that my grandfather is 92. He was actually 94. So I don't know why that was stated, just to clarify.
That's just information that I received from the petition packet. And
Okay.
so you would probably know better than I.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Judge Wong, Deputy Attorney General Jarvis, and members of the Board of Behavior Sciences, I have a prepared statement to share with you today that I myself wrote on my own behalf. I'm here today representing myself, as you know, to petition for early termination of my probation as an intern associate therapist and intern associate clinical counselor. I fully understand why I'm here today, and I am prepared to show you, to the best of my ability, why I'm rehabilitated and to take full responsibility for my past actions. 16 years ago, from 2005 to 2008, I stole money from my grandfather while caregiving for him. As a result of my past actions, I was later convicted of a misdemeanor for elder theft in 2012, 4 years after the criminal activity took place. Then, in February of 2016, my misdemeanor was expunged and the charges were dismissed. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, there are many things that I would have done differently in my life. And I deeply regret my choices back then and the pain that I caused to both my grandfather and his family. But I cannot change the past. All I can do now, today, is to take full responsibility for my past and to accept the consequences of my actions. It is my ongoing commitment to become a better person moving forward, having learned from my past. To be very honest with you, when I first applied to become a therapist back in 2016, I naively assumed that the BBS would excuse my past criminal activity because the events themselves took place 16 years ago from 2005 to 2008. However, it was only after my BBS application was denied that I sincerely began to understand why you made the decision you made. Because your top priority as the BBS is to follow the legal and ethical guidelines for protecting the safety of the public, given my past criminal activity, I do understand now why you had decided back in 2016 to initially deny my application. And then 2 years later, the board decided to grant me an associate registration number on appeal with probation. It is my understanding for this hearing today, in order to assess my request for early termination of probation, your decision will be based on the following criteria: the severity of the offense, whether there have been subsequent acts, the time that has elapsed since the acts, whether the applicant has complied with the terms of probation, and evidence of rehabilitation. Therefore, I will only speak on these topics. I fully recognize that stealing money from my grandfather was against the law, and this is why I did not fight the misdemeanor charge back then, and instead, I entered a guilty plea of a misdemeanor, no contest, for elder theft. Also, I have already paid back in full the $40,000 in restitution mandated by the courts to my grandfather's estate. To be very clear, I recognize completely that my past actions of criminal activity was substantially related to the qualifications, functions, and duties required for being a therapist. Again, I deeply regret stealing money from my grandfather and the pain that I caused to both him and his family, and that is something I will have to live with for the rest of my life. What I have learned throughout my life is that people usually only learn how to change for the better only when they themselves have to go through very difficult and painful experiences. During my 20s, I made terrible mistakes and I made really bad choices. But these very negative experiences then forced me to confront myself and to learn how to become a better person from the different challenges that I have experienced throughout my past. After being convicted of the misdemeanor many years ago, I have since abided by all the laws, and to clarify, there has been no subsequent acts of any legal or ethical wrongdoing. I have learned from my mistakes and my past bad choices. And because of already attending personal therapy for over a decade, I do know now exactly why I did what I did. And I can assure you that I will not ever cause harm to someone like that again. This entire experience has scarred me for life, and it will remain a part of my life forever. Because I alone cannot prove to you that I have changed, this is why I recently provided each of you with 5 signed and dated letters of recommendation, 3 of which are from board-certified therapists. Keith Burrell, who has been my only supervisor for the last 2.5 years, Claude Delabar, who has been my only weekly therapist for the last 2.5 years, and Jean Donald, who is a professional colleague. They are bound to follow the same legal and ethical standards required of being an active licensed therapist, and therefore, all of them are professionally qualified, in my opinion, to go on the record and to vouch for my good legal and ethical character, which they all were willing to do for me upon request. I believe these letters of recommendation speak for themselves, and I truly hope that you all give significant consideration towards the letters of recommendation to represent all the ways that I have been rehabilitated. That said, I will briefly comment now on why I personally feel rehabilitated, since the board had issued me a probationary intern associate license back in 2018. During the last 2.5 years of my probation, I have consistently demonstrated that I am safe to practice therapy with the public, providing quarterly reports throughout to the BBS, seeing a weekly therapist, and I have followed all the terms of your probation. And the probation monitor has also confirmed to me by email that I am fully in compliance with the terms of my probation. Additionally, your board certified psychologist had performed a psych evaluation on me, and they also talked with my weekly therapist, and they both assessed that I am legally and ethically safe to practice therapy with the public. I also attended several remedial law and ethics courses per the terms of my probation, and I have also taken many other extra additional courses, seminars, and trainings to increase my scope of competency, beyond that which was required from the BBS. And lastly, both of my intern associate licenses for MFT and PCC are currently renewed, up to date, and both associate licenses are in good standing without ever once having any issues. Also, for the last 2.5 years, I've been working as an associate therapist for the public elementary schools under a district contract with the nonprofit Bay Area Community Resources to practice as a public elementary school counselor. I am working side by side with all of the teachers, and my bosses includes my weekly supervisor, the clinical director, and the school principal. Never once have I had any complaints or concerns from either work colleagues or my supervisor or the teachers or the school principal or any of my clients. I am reliable and a trusted confidant for both my clients and those who I consult with on behalf of my clients. The community I serve is a mixed race and very diverse population of underserved and low socioeconomic. I got into this profession of school counseling for public elementary schools, not for the money, but for the public service, because I wanted to make a difference using the skills I have acquired over the course of my life for those who really need it most. I grew up in a very small town in the countryside, and we never had resources like social emotional behavior health, as in we did not have hardly any local therapy services. Because of that, I never was educated with how to express my feelings. In other words, I never had an outlet of support from the local public school system for dealing with traumatic experiences that I personally had undergone. Things like repeated bullying, low self-esteem, and low self-confidence. And I also was diagnosed by a psychologist during my 20s with the learning disability ADHD, anxiety disorder, hoarding, and OCD. Later, after high school, and after so much therapy to heal from and to process the painful things that I had done during my 20s, I eventually went to grad school to become a pre-licensed therapist, school counselor for public education, because I wanted to give children the kind of support that I never got to have growing up. I didn't want children today making the same mistakes that I did back then as a young adult, because I never had anyone to talk to about my ongoing fears and my ongoing anxieties. Nobody was there to show me the way. I had no role models back then until much, much later in life, when I alone had to go out and find the help for myself on my own. I literally became a public elementary school counselor to help people like me, children with backgrounds of cognitive and developmental challenges, including family dysfunction and childhood complex PTSD. I've already healed so much from my traumatic past, and I really have been trying my best to pay it forward. That said, I still continue to heal from the emotional wounds, from the negative experiences I had to deal with growing up. And this is why I will always be pushing myself to grow and to heal in new ways. And not just for me, but especially in support of my therapy clients and their social emotional needs. In addition to previously serving 3 years probation and community service for my past misdemeanor conviction, I've also now waited 4.5 years since my initial application, going through the BBS application process. All of these kinds of experiences have taught me so much about what it really means to take full responsibility now for the past actions, and that if you want something in life bad enough, then you have to work hard for it, and you have to do it the right way. Because what I did to my grandfather, stealing money to make my life easier for personal gain, that was absolutely not okay, not ever. So I hope that I have proven today to all of you that rehabilitation actually does work, and that people can change with patience and from doing the hard work necessary on themselves to become a better person. And just like I always teach my kids, that it's never too late to change, and that we all make terrible mistakes sometimes, and that with the right kinds of support, it's not too late for anyone. And that includes me. If you decide that I still need to continue with further probation, then I will trust all of you and your decision. But again, I do sincerely hope that you'll first consider all of the evidence that I have already provided you in support of my rehabilitation before making your decision. Thank you, BBS, for reading all of my letters of recommendation, and thank you for hearing my personal statement today. If you have any questions for me now, I am open and happy to answer anything else you would like to know about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jarvis, anything on cross?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Neft, can you explain a little bit about your license tolling? I understand you are working in an educational setting and therefore your license was tolled. Can you explain that?
Yeah, we don't work during the summer because it's based on the academic school year. It's the public education system. And so there's no clients for me to see every summer.
Okay, so you weren't able to get sufficient hours in order to continue to comply with the probation, essentially.
Yeah, there's no hours. There's no hours available. Yeah.
All right. And so other than those 2 summers then, I think it was 2?
Correct.
Have you been completely working and able to get sufficient hours?
Correct.
During those summers when you were told, did you still comply with the other terms of probation, even though you were told and not completely required to?
Yes.
There was a question in your underlying case about whether or not the people who had written you letters of recommendation kind of knew the full story about your conviction. For the people that wrote letters for you today, several of them do mention sort of vaguely that they are familiar with the story or they're aware of what happened. What did you tell the people that you asked to write letters for you about your conviction?
I told them that I stole money from my grandfather, and I took advantage of the situation. I took advantage of his trust, and that I deeply regret what I did. And if they're willing to write a letter of recommendation, I would really appreciate it.
And then let me look at one other thing in your petition packet. You had submitted a certificate of completion that I was a little confused about, and it says that it was I'm looking for it real quick, the Center for Healing Shame, a 13-hour. Does that qualify as continuing education hours, or is that something you did other than continuing education?
That's beyond the requirement. That's extra.
And why did you do that?
Because of course I feel shame. I've been living with shame ever since that time and having to deal with owning up to what I did. And it's not just with others, but especially towards myself.
And then I can't find where I saw the reference, but have you sought to, or have you actually gotten your conviction expunged?
Yes, it was expunged 3 years after the conviction.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And Ms. Jarvis, I just want to clarify what you were saying earlier with the question around letters of recommendation. Both the supervisor and therapist were required to read my entire police report and the I can't remember what that document's called that the prior judge at the hearing in Oakland she wrote, and so I had to provide that to both of them, and they both read it before they wrote their letters of recommendation.
And I generally refer to that as the underlying decision in order because you're here asking for a new decision in order. So
okay, thank you.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Neff, is there anything else you wanted to say on your behalf?
Not at this time.
All right, so I'll turn it over to the board. First, Ms. Willis, any questions?
No questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Streck, any questions?
Just a few questions. You're currently employed with a school district, that's correct?
Through the nonprofit Bay Area Community Resources.
Do you have any billing role as part of your job now, or is it handled by others?
There's no billing that's handled under my job description.
Okay. Are there particular elements of your current probation there that are troublesome to you? Or is it sort of the overall process?
Could you rephrase the question? I don't understand.
So you're seeking termination of probation, and so I'm kind of trying to figure out what part of the process is troublesome to you. Is it simply being on probation, or are there particular elements of the process that are troublesome?
I'm still confused. What troublesome are you referring to?
You're currently on. You're seeking to end probation, and I'm more specifically trying to help me understand. Want you to help me understand why you want to end the probation.
Oh, I see now. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. It's a financial challenge for me to keep paying the, especially because I don't make a lot currently as a associate therapist, and so that's one thing. And then also the weekly cost of seeing a therapist, and it's primarily the financial burden, but also I am clear that I don't pose a threat to the public, and I feel that 2.5 years has been time served, but that's of course your decision to make. I'm advocating for myself as best I can.
Sure, I appreciate that. Just one other question, then I'll let other board members jump in. You mentioned kind of the weekly therapy being a cost burden to you. Is therapy in general something you plan to continue after, maybe in some lesser frequency, or is this something that you feel like you've kind of come to the end of your need in that area?
Well, to be very honest with you, I would rather see a somatic experiencing practitioner to deal with the trauma that still exists in my body. But right now, I'm not allowed to. I have to see a licensed therapist per the terms of my probation.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I have no other questions right now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Wendy.
Great. Mr. Sovek, any questions?
No questions at this time.
Mr. Ranasinger, any questions?
Yes. Mr. Neft, in your original application, there's a section in the application where it says, what have you done to ensure that you're safe to practice? And in that application, the only thing you wrote was see attached letters of recommendation. Was there a particular reason why you didn't sort of expand on that at the time or sort of write fully what you had done? Because the application, when it was presented, was a little terse.
Yeah, the section you're referring to, talking with my probation monitor, that was my understanding of what I was supposed to provide in that section. I didn't know I was supposed to say anything else.
Okay, and that is understandable. Okay, I have no. Oh, one more question. Other than minor traffic offenses, Mr. Neft, since the arrest for your misdemeanor, have you had any further contacts with law enforcement or the court system?
I've never had anything else.
Okay. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
And just to clarify, I've never had anything before that incident either.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Maddox, any questions?
Thank you. I was trying to unmute. So thank you, Mr. Neff, for coming in today. I just have a couple just curiosity questions. I am wondering, what impact did your choices or did this behavior have on, your grandfather and family? Like, as you reflect back, how did this impact them?
Well, for my grandfather, he had severe dementia and was diagnosed by a doctor at the end. And he died approximately 5 to 6 months after I was removed from caregiving. And the impact, this has haunted me from that day to now because we were extremely close. And I have no idea what his biological son said to him about me. And I was never allowed to talk with him again. I pleaded with them to be able to reconcile as if possible and to talk to my grandfather. I was prevented that opportunity. And so I can only imagine what he must have thought in his dying days. And also, they removed him from his home of 26 years where he lived with my grandmother, and then for 5 more years beyond her passing. And I know that when they moved him out of his home and into an elder care facility in a different state, I'm sure that he was really unhappy and disoriented on top of the dementia. So I have no idea how painful it was and confusing for him to hear what I did, which is factual. I did steal money from him and a lot of it. And then also on top of that, whatever the son said. But on top of that, I can only imagine the trust that I lost from his biological sons. They only visited their dad. Only one of them visited in person once a year, and the other one would call him a couple times a year. So as far as I know, they were never particularly close to him. But I can imagine, and I've thought about this a lot, and I've talked about it in therapy, that if I was someone's son and I found out that my father had money being stolen from his caregiver, that would be a huge, huge breach of trust. And I wouldn't blame them at all to be out for blood and really upset and angry with me and wanting me to pay for what I did. And so I don't blame them whatsoever for contacting the sheriff, because it wasn't my grandfather, it was the 2 biological sons that called the sheriff. I don't blame them for that. And I am responsible for what I did, and I'm glad they did because it forced me to take responsibility for my actions.
Thank you. No, so first of all, I want to say I'm very sorry that there was no opportunity for you to get closure with your grandfather. It sounds like that is still very impactful for you. And I just appreciate your humility around sort of understanding how this violation would have impacted your family. So is it fair to say, and I'm actually going somewhere with my questions, you have not had much contact with your, I know you called them your grandfather's biological sons, but wouldn't those be your uncles?
I barely talked to them. I mean, they hardly ever visited their grandfather. So, that was one of the reasons why I was always the caregiver. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm feeling emotional right now. They rarely visited him, and so I was the only person to step in when my grandmother died in a car accident. And so for the 5 years I cared for him, it was because I had already been so close with both of them. Throughout high school, I would visit them every day. As I mentioned, I was bullied, so I was very socially awkward at that time, and I still am to some degree. And so, anyways, I don't want to ramble on. I hope.
Yeah, no, I understand that part. But my question was, aren't those gentlemen your uncles? You keep calling them my grandfather's sons. Are they your uncles?
The only one that I ever, on his side of the family, that I felt a relationship to, that I ever really saw, was my grandfather. He was a presence throughout my whole upbringing.
Okay.
And I didn't really know anyone else in his family, and they didn't know me, and they didn't know my parents that well. None of us.
All right. No, that's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. So the reason why I asked that question is, you described in that role, you were taking care of a very vulnerable person. And in your role as a therapist, you are providing mental health care to a very vulnerable population. These are children and families who are trusting and depending on you to provide competent mental health care and not to take advantage of them. So I'm curious, what sorts of things are you doing differently that you've learned in therapy that will ensure that you don't take advantage of any vulnerable populations or clients or families that you're working with? Could you help the board understand what you've learned about yourself and what you're doing to safeguard the public from that? I don't want to say tendency because it only happened once, but it was pretty significant. So from that opportunity.
Well, the first thing I just want to clarify is that at the time, and I know it was wrong now, but at the time when I was in my 20s doing the criminal activity, the way that I rationalized it was somebody would have had to pay to caregiver for him because he didn't have a license. He needed someone to drive him to places, to pick up his groceries, to pick up his medications. And so at the time, that's how I rationalized to myself that it was okay to steal money. And I was too afraid to ask him because he was a proud Irishman from Chicago. And I was just too afraid if he said no, then I wouldn't be able to caregive for him. And instead of having to face that possibility, I just chose to steal money instead and pay myself without asking him. And so now to get to your question, because that was the rationale I had back then, there is no situation I've ever encountered as a therapist, and there is no foreseeable situation I ever encountered as a therapist where I would need to steal money or rationalize stealing money. There's my ethical
Can I slow you down a little bit? Can I slow you down,
Yeah.
Mr. Neff, if you don't mind? Because I didn't ask about stealing money. What I asked about was working with vulnerable populations. And so money could just be a metaphor for anything else. And so my question was more directly, what have you learned about why you did that then? And you did answer that, so thank you. But I'm more curious about what sort of internal and external safeguards exist in your life to ensure that that doesn't happen again, since you work with vulnerable children and families. That's my question.
Thank you. Well, for one, all of my client cases with the school system are consulted with my clinical director as well as my supervisor. And even if he will still be my supervisor for the remainder of my associate registration, regardless of whether you guys give permission for the early termination. And so I will continue to have accountability there. I also confer with the principal weekly on all of my clients and the kids and the situations. So they're apprised of what's happening, as well as the teachers. And I will continue to remain working with the school system beyond this petition and beyond, hopefully when I get licensed, I will then still continue to work with the school system because, and then in addition to that, I have my aunt, and she is my ethical compass. She is the most straight and narrow and honest person I've ever met, and she's actually been a real core person for me to help me deal with my shame and deal with the regret that I feel, and helping me learn how to forgive myself, because that is still an ongoing process. I'm still learning how to forgive myself for what I did back then. And so it's the principal, my supervisor, my aunt, and then of course my professional colleagues as well. Jean Donald has really been a rock for me. She's someone who I've known since grad school, and she also is someone that I'm constantly picking her brain to make sure I'm actually overly obsessively concerned to make sure that everything I'm doing has the client's interests at heart, and that I am beyond ethical. Like what is the higher level of standards that I can adhere to? And she often tells me that I'm like nitpicking, but I feel like I have to in order to do right by my past. And this is because I just want to say one last thing. My aunt said to me one time, shortly after this incident first happened, when I asked her, "How do you forgive yourself?" And she said to me, "By becoming a different person and living your life different today." And so that's why I have people that keep me with checks and balances to ensure that I am a good person and that I'm doing right by others.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. It sounds like you have a pretty clear plan about accountability with other people. I do have a question and a comment. So if you were to be released from probation, if the board chooses to honor what you're asking, would you continue in therapy?
Yes, as I mentioned to the previous, I think her name was Wendy, that I would continue, but I would like to switch to somatic experiencing, because that deals more with the body. And right now, with a licensed therapist, we focus more on talk therapy. And I would like to transition to working with the trauma that I still deal with in my body.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And I did hear that. And then I guess just my final comment is one, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your reflective forthrightness to the questions that have been asked so far. But it also seems like you're still struggling with a tremendous amount of shame and other things related to the decision that you made. And so I'm not necessarily, so I would encourage you to continue to keep that at the forefront of any mental health professional you choose to work with, that, you know, you're grieving, you're forgiving yourself, and managing that shame is pretty useful to sort of address in talk therapy. So you may just want to consider what role that may have in your health and wellness as you move forward. But thank you very much for coming today, and I don't have any more questions.
Mr. Maddox, I just want to add that that's why I provided the shame healing shame remedial course that I took, and I intend to take more with their 2 licensed therapists who facilitate that, and they have a series. And so that's another support that they have a total of 8 courses, and I've only done 1, and I intend to do the remaining 7.
No, I appreciate that. And I guess I'll just add, since you threw that in there, I am a licensed therapist. And while trainings are important, education can expand your mind, but not heal your heart. So I want you to hold that we can go to as many trainings as we'd like to sort of expand our cognitive capacities and our vocabulary clinically, but that doesn't take the place of doing the work of going back and looking at some very painful, hurtful things that have happened in our lives. So thank you for letting me know that and there's still a lot of hard work to be done.
I will I will heed your advice, and thank you. Given what you said, I'm actually reconsidering. Maybe I should stay with my current therapist concurrently while I see a somatic experiencing practitioner. I'm open to that option.
Your Honor, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Jones, any questions?
I do actually just have one question, Mr. Neff. I'm curious as to why, or help me understand your decision-making process for the tolling. I understand I'm actually an educational psychologist, so I do the majority of my work during the school year also. But being that you're on probation and this is something that you want to get rid of, why did you not try to seek out additional hours during the summertime when you weren't seeing kids at school in a different agency?
So I consulted with my my probation monitor about this, and he told me that it would not reflect badly and there would be no harm. It's understandable that since I am working in the education system, that there is no work to be had during the summer. And I did apply to Head Start, and they denied my application because of my past.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, any questions, Dr. Herwick?
No, thank you. My questions have been answered.
Ms. Friedman, any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Neff. My question concerns something I think you said was in your past. I think you said that you were dealing with hoarding and OCD and anxiety. I mean, are those things that you have overcome in your therapy, or are you still dealing with those too?
I went through several support groups and a treatment program for hoarding, so I no longer consider myself a hoarder, and I no longer consider myself dealing with OCD either. And anxiety, that's in the eyes of the beholder. It's my personal view that I have overcome the majority of the diagnostic criteria that previously was met for anxiety disorder. NOS is what I had at the time. However, ADHD is something that I deal with and will always deal with my whole life.
My other question is sort of like maybe not having to do so much with your probation, but I'm curious, in this past year, were you dealing with the kids totally through the computer or on their phones? How were you dealing with these children?
Through Zoom exclusively.
Sorry?
Sorry, say it again.
Well, during the pandemic, how were you dealing with the children? Obviously, they were not in class.
Correct. And so I've been an adjunct support for all the teachers, and I'm there with the teachers every single week, supporting all of the classes. And we've been processing things, social emotional support around making sense of COVID. The kids are surprisingly very insightful and very clued in as to the impact it's having on themselves and the isolation and missing their friends, as well as the impact on their academic performance. It's harder to stay engaged, as well as also, having to do distance learning versus in person. That's like a whole different ball game. And on top of that, a real hidden blessing in disguise was as a result of what's been happening with the George Floyd case. I was able to access a much larger clientele, and we processed in all the classrooms about how that was affecting the kids, and that then drew out in them one child who is of Mexican descent. He said that he's been told in his life, you should just go back to Mexico. And then another girl who is Muslim said she was prohibited from participating in activities because the girls were saying your religion doesn't allow that. And then there was another girl who was Black, and she talked about going on vacation, and she felt like everyone was staring at her because only white people were around. And so, the circumstances of Zoom and distance learning have allowed children to normalize their experiences and feel safe enough to open up in ways of what's happening for them. Whereas before I was only working in groups of 3 to 4 and individually with 1-to-1. And so for me personally, Zoom has brought out and normalized a lot of the feelings that kids are having during these very trying times.
Very interesting. And thank you very much. And thanks for being here and telling us your story.
Thank you, Susan.
Ms. Brown, any questions?
Yes, I have a couple. I guess maybe one and then maybe a follow-up. Can you maybe give me a brief explanation of why and the circumstances under which you decided to start stealing from your grandfather?
I actually remember the moment that I made that decision to steal. I went to the ATM with the bank with my grandfather to get him an ATM card. And because he didn't have a car, he needed me to withdraw the cash for him. Again, he's from Chicago during the days of the Depression, and he was old school, and he always did things typically that way. And so initially, when I stole money, it was me rationalizing, well, I'm going to give him some cash, and then I'll keep some for me and pay myself for being his caregiver. And again, that's how I rationalized taking the money. And I don't know if you saw it in the police report, but the reason why I had to pay $40,000 restitution instead of the 98 is because the judge in that legal conviction had determined that somebody would have had to gotten paid to care for my grandfather. And so they determined a figure that they decided, I don't know how they came to that. And then they reduced the amount that I needed to pay back in restitution. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I wanted to hear from you that you understood what you did and why you did what you did.
Correct. And I do. And bottom line, I was too afraid to ask my grandfather, could I get paid for caregiving for him? That is the absolute truth. And instead of asking him and doing the right thing, I didn't ask him, and I just took money and I lied and I stole and I rationalized it. And I regret my choices. And I now will have to live with it the rest of my life.
Any questions, Madam Vice Chairwoman?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Mr. Neft. So nice to see you here and hearing your testimony. I'm wondering, so how long, how long do you think that you're going to be able to accumulate your licensing hours, your clinical hours?
Are you asking how much longer will I have?
Yes.
So after this school year, I think it will take me 1 more year before I have the hours to apply.
So, so right now you have a very good, support system, even in the school district. You
Yes.
have a lot of people to go. And so do you feel that you're ready to practice independently without the structure that you currently have?
I do. However, I just want you to know that my clinical director has already informed me that there's a job waiting for me when I become licensed. And that means that I'll still be working within the same structure. And like I said previously, I really love working with kids. It's my heart's joy. And they're the most impressionable at that age. And so I have an opportunity to make the most impact when the traumas are first happening. and especially as a liaison between children and their parents, and helping bridge the gap of talking about feelings and taboo subjects. And so my support system that I've already been relying on will continue to remain through the rest of my associate registration and then on into being licensed.
Okay, I'm glad that you have that confidence. The other thing that I want to just follow up with part of your testimony, and is the fact that you sometimes you feel like that you have a hard time in asking questions, hard questions, especially based due to the shame and guilt that you deal with. So in your practice, do you feel like that you have a hard time going there? When you're in counseling with your students, or dealing with your supervisors, or dealing with the superintendent?
Well, I'm a little confused by your question. I can answer it, but I don't recall saying that I had a hard time with asking questions.
Well, I think it's about the act, the process, the reason why you were why you committed the crime, partly was because you had a hard time asking your grandfather,
Oh, I see what you're
you see
saying.
what I'm
Well,
talking about. So I'm just trying to equate, trying to
yeah,
figure out how that thought process has been changed.
yeah. So just to give you perspective, since that was 16 years ago, and then for 3 to 4 years, starting 16 years ago, I am not the same person as I was back then. And actually, the process, as I'm sure a lot of you know, who are therapists, I believe everyone on the board are therapists or licensed clinicians. No, I'm seeing a shaking head. Okay, I did not know that. Okay, well, the process of going through grad school to become a therapist requires a tremendous amount of introspection and personal growth. And I'm really glad there's a requirement that you have to do weekly therapy as part of grad school. And so the transformation, the primary transformation in my self-confidence and self-worth and assertiveness all came out of that. And in fact, if you were to talk to my supervisor now, I'm extremely confident he would say that I have no problem asking the tough questions, and skillfully, I call it a firm gentleness, leaning in and touching on those areas in service of my clients and their growth.
Very good, very good. And I think you partly asked, answer my question really is about like who really you are now, because I think we have a pretty clear picture about, the acts you have committed 13 years ago. And yet, the transformation, we're just knowing you, since the last hour something. So, so if you can give us, some, just highlight, what really are the, you highlighted some of the changes. And, and I think one of our concern is like, are you healthy to practice? So, so what can you tell us that, in terms of who you are now, that you are healthy to practice?
I'm happy to answer that. Would you be willing to define what you mean by healthy? Because I don't want to assume. What do you mean by the word?
It's from you. I don't think that we have a checklist, so share with what your understanding about yourself.
Okay. I mean, I can speak to what the word healthy means to me. Healthy means that you have a good sense of self, that you have a reason to wake up in the morning and live a productive life. Every time I see my kids, I call them my kiddos at the school counseling, they bring a smile to my face, and they instantly give me motivation and reason to be in this career. And until becoming a therapist, I was so confused and lacking purpose and direction. I was like a human flailing about life. But now, as a result of being a therapist, an associate therapist, I'm able to constantly pay it forward and use the lessons and the mistakes that I've made from the past and help improve other people's lives as a result. And especially with kids, I just have like a sixth sense for identifying where wounding is and where they're not necessarily coming forward and saying what's really going on. And that is such a joy and motivation for me to help them feel safe enough and vulnerable enough to come out of hiding, to come out of their shell, and to trust me. And I don't take that lightly ever. I never take for granted the trust that the kids place in me and the families place in me. I'm doing collateral sessions with the parents or the teachers on behalf of the kids. And it just really has given me a sense of direction and purpose in my life that I never had before. And I really, really love working with kids. I just can't stress that enough.
Absolutely. You know, we can feel your compassion. Your actually, I take that word back, is your passion about working with kids. So my last question, I promise it's the last question. So do you work with your supervisor about countertransference?
With countertransference? Oh, yes. All the time. Since I grew up in a small country town, there's been a huge cultural and diversity competency that I've had to lean into, and he's always encouraging me. At this point now, I'm clear that I'm able to do it on my own, but at the beginning, he was constantly saying, this is another opportunity for you to lean in. And for example, like he wants me to name with my kid clients that the color of our skin is different, and what's it like to have a white school counselor, white therapist. And so when I have those conversations, all of a sudden I'm discovering kids are thinking about these things. And so my supervisor has been a godsend to me, and encouraging me to show up in new ways.
Thank you very much. I have no further question, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, any questions?
No further questions. And I just wanted to thank Mr. Neff for being here and for being so genuine and articulated in your answers. Our board is composed, just to go back to your questions, by some members of the public, including myself, and many other amazing licensees from different professions and licenses as well. So just for the record, and those that are listening, and yourself. So thank you so much. Your Honor, no question here, so I'll move it back to you.
All right, so I think I've gone through the board, but I'll check to see if anyone else has thought of any questions since then. Any further questions by the board?
This is John Sovek. I do have some questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Neff, I didn't ask questions earlier because I just wanted to kind of get more of a experience of you and the work that you do. But three kind of questions have shown up for me during the course of this conversation. The first one I would want to ask you is, do you feel, you mentioned ethics, like that word ethics or ethical has come out of your conversations quite often today. Do you feel that the structure of ethics that our licenses puts into place helps to give you kind of a set of parameters and guideposts to like move forward in this work?
Correct, especially the study preparation required to pass the law and ethics exam. That has really been a key piece as a guide. But to me, it's beyond just what the question you're asking. I mean, what I experience is this is really a question of morality and what kind of person are you as a citizen in this country. And so, I'm expected to operate at much higher standards than whatever is considered typical, because the public is placing their safety and trust in me talking about extremely vulnerable and confidential topics. And I never take that for granted, and I do not take that lightly. And furthermore, because I'm always thinking about how would I feel if I was them and someone were to breach that relationship. And so I'm clear that I would never, ever breach that relationship, ever.
And then just taking off of how you answered this,
yes.
What then would you say are the guideposts of your personal ethical standards in your full life currently?
The first and foremost is the golden rule. Treat others as you would want to be treated. Do no harm. And that is not just what I define as no harm. I'm really glad earlier with, I think, the previous petitioner, or before the petitioner, I heard that the discussion around gender pronouns, and so honoring what other maybe that was you actually. I think that's you who brought that up, right? And I have a work colleague who is a they, and so honoring what other people's standards are that they themselves hold. And so it's my duty to always go above and beyond and ask those extra questions to give people the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And it's not just, again, as a therapist, but as a human. And then also, I'm just going to pause for a second. Noticing myself getting riled up. This has been a very nerve-wracking process. My first time ever going in front of the board.
We totally understand, and you have all of our care and empathy with you in this process.
Yeah, I previously thought you guys were big, bad, scary people, but you all have been very humanized today, and my heart rate has gone down over the course of engaging with you, so that feels good. And then also, to be perfectly honest, it's my grandmother and grandfather, and the grandfather who I stole money from. They were some of the most kind, sincere, ethical people that you would ever meet, including my aunt, who is still alive and is a big influence. I jokingly call her mom my other mom. It's the acronym. And so, to do right by the memory of my grandmother and my grandfather, what I did before is a constant guidepost and a constant reminder of what happens when you let your ethical compass go, when you go by the wayside and you give into the human temptation of greed and of fear. And the best antidote for that, and I have a rule with everyone in my life, that within 48 hours, anyone I have a close personal relationship with, that we have no communication withholds, so that we out whatever it is that's not being said, so there's no temptation to keep secrets or to hide or avoid. And so I live by that creed, and I live by the standards that I've just shared.
Thank you. I have no further questions, but thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Any further questions from any other members of the board? All right, hearing none. Any further questions, Ms. Jarvis?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Neff, you're the petitioner, so I'll give you the final word if you have anything else to say on your behalf.
Just like the previous petitioner, I did not know that there was a concluding opportunity to say remarks. And I'll just, I'm looking at your faces right now, and I'm just gonna feel into my heart for a second, if that's okay. Life has a way of humbling you through experiences. I didn't ask to have the traumas I experienced growing up, but nonetheless, we all have things we are challenged in that we deal with. And hopefully we rise to the occasion in our elder years and we learn from those experiences. And I'm clear that I am not the same person as I was before because of my experiences. And as much as initially I was really challenged not being granted a registration number without probation, I'm clear that having probation has forced me to really confront the parts of myself that I didn't want to, that I was afraid to. And now that I have, I can see in hindsight how much of a gift that is, because it's helping me in the grieving process. It's helping me restore my faith in myself, and especially in those who have stood by and advocated for me and caring about me. And I promise you, there's no bigger fan than my clinical director and supervisor. Like, at times when I have felt like, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I can handle the probation longer, he just is such a guiding light and reminds me all the time of the positive feedback that he hears from the principal and from parents who report to the teachers, and what the teachers say, and what the kids say about the influence and impact I make on them. And so all of that has really helped me find, like I said, a purpose and direction in life. And I'm clear that even before my initial application was denied, that I was already a therapist before becoming a therapist, because I just genuinely like to help people and offer support and be a listening ear. And so I'm extremely grateful to the board that you allowed me to become an associate therapist with probation. And I really hope and pray that after today, you give considerable consideration to my request for early termination of probation. And I will continue to do right and make the entire board and this profession proud as a good person, as a good citizen, and especially as a very skillful and effective and ethically abiding therapist. And I thank you for your time today.
All right, thank you. So you're excused as a witness, Mr. Neff, and do you rest your case at this time?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
And actually, it just reminded me, we were going to keep the record open to receive some documents from you, or a document from you, correct?
Yes, I forgot to mention, I completely forgot that the contract that is with the school counselor position, this year, AmeriCorps joined us. And so I'm part of a 2-year contract with AmeriCorps. And that's an extra way that I'm learning to serve the community and the needs of the population that we serve.
Okay. So other than that, we'll after we finish the hearing, we'll talk about deadlines for producing that document. Ms. Jarvis, do you wish to give a closing?
I do not, Your Honor. At this time, I have no recommendation. I will simply defer to the expertise of the board. Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Neff, you gave a little bit of a closing just a moment ago. Was there anything else you wanted to say in closing?
Just that, you know, I during the pandemic, there's never been more of a time and a need for the work that we do. And, you know, I'm just extremely grateful that I consider myself one of the first responders, you know, beyond just the fact that people have been losing their lives. There's a huge emotional toll, especially on essential workers, and then the children, the kids that are part of their family. And so I'm just really grateful that I've had an opportunity to make a difference in the world in this way. It gives me a sense of gratitude. Gratitude that I have something to offer, because without that, you know, I don't know where I would be right now in life.
All right, thank you. So let's talk about submitting the letter you wanted to submit. How much time do you need to submit that, Mr. Neft?
I imagine no more than a week at most.
Okay, Ms. Jarvis, should he submit it to you and for you to submit it to the board, or should it be submitted directly to the board? Or perhaps I should ask Mr. Chairman that question.
I actually think that he should probably submit it to his probation monitor, because the way it works is that then the document can be uploaded to the board through a cloud server. And then the board can just email it to me and upload it to OAH.
Correct.
Oh, okay. So do you understand that, Mr. Neff? Send it to your probation monitor, and then your probation monitor could distribute it to Ms. Jarvis and to myself.
Okay, I can do that, no problem.
And so if we do it by, let's see, today is Thursday, so it'd be next Thursday, the 13th. Does that give you enough time?
Yes, that's plenty of time.
So Thursday, May 13th by 5 p.m. Ms. Jarvis, did you want a chance to respond?
No, Your Honor, I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, so we'll do
Your
that. So the letter will be due by 5 p.m. Thursday, May 13th, 2021, after which the record will be closed and the matter submitted.
Your Honor,
Okay? Yes.
just procedural questions here, the board chair. The board will convey this afternoon and make a decision on the case. So I just wanted for clarity, we are not postponing the decision-making process of this case. The petition will be discussed this afternoon. So just making sure that we are all clear about. So the additional documentations that will come to us will come after the decision is made.
Right. So I guess that is one of the things, and it was a little hard for me to during the hearing to ask the board how it wanted to handle this. So Mr. Neff, I don't know if you understood what Chairman Disposti was explaining is, as I mentioned after the prior matter, once we hear all the petitions today, the board will meet in closed session and decide the matters. So if you're not producing the document until next week, a decision will be made before the board gets the document.
I only asked for a week because of in the past a couple times there's been like technical email issue, you know, with sending attachments to the probation monitor, and so I was just trying to allow extra time in the event. But I am asking the board to trust the fact that I am enrolled with AmeriCorps and that I will provide that document after you've made your decision, proving that I am indeed on a 2-year contract through AmeriCorps.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thanks for clarifying. I just want to make sure we were all on the same page.
Right.
In the past, Your Honor, in some cases, the letters were already present during our lunch break. The petitioners might, you know, use that time to upload. But in this case, since they had to be procured, I don't think this is going to affect in one way or another our decision-making process this afternoon. So I just wanted to reassure our petitioner not to be worried about that. So it will be just a file for the record.
Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. All right. So with that, well, I guess the record's not closed yet. It will be closed and submitted at 5 p.m. on May 13th, 2021. And with that, we are off the record. So, Mr. Neff, as I previously explained, you won't receive a decision today. You'll receive one in the mail in the future. But what you will receive from my office, if not today, hopefully tomorrow, is a copy of the court reporter billing sheet. And again, that's just in case you want a copy of today's transcript that will have the information you need to go about ordering a copy. Okay?
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, I'm just I'm glad that I was able to do this over Zoom, to be honest, because then I didn't have to drive to Sacramento.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much, and you're free to disconnect.
Okay, thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye. Mr. Chairman, do you wish to take a break at this time?
Yes, I think so. I think it's time, otherwise we'll be too late. I will suggest, if my fellow board member are okay with that, 35 minutes break, so coming back at 12:30. So we can resume the work at 12:30. Our next petitions will be Joseph Edwards, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's how
Okay.
I have as well.
Wonderful. You all enjoy the break.
Thank you.